This is Tilly, and she's one of my labs, and she's in the environment here in which she's been trained for about the last 5.5 years. Okay, this environment and environment's very similar to it. This would be her training context, this would be her village hall, this would be her her back garden, it would be her training field, it would be her agility ring, whatever you want to call it. This would be hers. And research and researchers would say and have you believe that if a dog has received training that has involved some kind of corrective procedure, okay, within a certain context, that dog, due to an increase in levels of cortisol, will display behaviours indicative of apprehension, fear, avoidance, stress, anxiety, those sort of things. That's what you'll see in the dog. So consequently, the dog will see you because you are the person responsible for the delivery of the corrections for welfare compromising behaviours, be it towards the dog themselves or some other third-party subject. But because you are responsible as being the person that delivered that correction, your dog will see you as something to avoid, something to keep away from, something to mistrust, and something basically negative, certainly when you put yourself back in the context where the training has taken place. So what you should be seeing here, according to research and academic findings, is a dog that doesn't want to be with me and is pretty much reliant upon my coercive nature or my coercive means. She shouldn't want to go off and explore her environment at all, because the environment and exploration of it would be associated with the receipt of unwarranted, unpredictable and uncontrollable correction. So really what you ought to be seeing is a dog that's basically just shitting herself, or certainly very, very wary. The tail carriage would be low, the tail wouldn't necessarily be wagging unless it's a very, very low submissive wag, but that's not taking into account rather the fact that you may have a dog that is of a submissive nature anyway. But if you're going to admit that, then you have to admit that some dogs are submissive and some dogs aren't, which opens up a whole new line of argument or discussion in relation to hierarchy within dogs, which people don't like talking about either. So there she is, exploring some of her environment. She's not happy about doing it. She's afraid of doing it because the environment represents negatives for her. Now, Tilly would appear to make it seem as though I'm talking shit. And I am, because they are. Because you cannot snapshot behaviour and draw long-term inference on the basis of that snapshot. That isn't how it works. A study conducted, such as the study that's used to support the Scottish parliamentary decision to ban electronic training collars, study conducted over 5 days with 2 15-minute training sessions per day, is woefully inadequate to draw inference or conclusion on long-term welfare implications for the recipients of any corrections that were delivered throughout the duration of that study. What you need in order to determine long-term welfare is long-term evidence. And if we look at the fact that remote collars have been around for years now, there ought to be plenty of long-term evidence which categorically and without question demonstrates the impaired welfare of any and all dogs that have been subject to the use of those tools. However, what you find is that there is no such evidence forthcoming. Instead, you get a spattering of research articles, a spattering of government-funded, oh shit, they're kicking off again, we better try and find something. Fellas, can you do us a favour? Go out there and study dogs with e-collars and come back and tell us whether they're good or bad. You get that sort of thing come out instead. But the thing is that I'm one of hundreds of thousands of people that are frustrated to hell with this. And it isn't because my dog can't operate without an e-collar, therefore I need an e-collar. It isn't because, well, I'll tell you what, I'm a supplier of e-collars. I couldn't give, if the e-collar ban were not to go ahead, or if the e-collar ban in Wales were to be rescinded, I would never sell another e-collar as long as I lived. I would never sell one. I couldn't care less about the sale. The only reason that I sell the collars that I sell is because I want to sell the best quality collars that there are, which is e-collar technologies and Dogtra. If you've got endless amounts of money, then you might want to look at Martin Systems collars, which are hugely expensive, but you know, if you've got the money and you don't really care, you might want to go for that. But the only reason for the collars is because I want to ensure that if somebody is going to use them, where it is necessary that they use them, or it's considered you know, beneficial to the welfare of the animal or some other third party, that an e-collar is used, then why not use the best one that you can? But as I say, it's not about selling. I couldn't care less about that. Or is it about the fact that, well, you're reliant upon e-collars in order to train dogs? Your business is reliant upon e-collars. No, it isn't. I use them a lot. But I'm not reliant upon them. The reason that I use them a lot is because they're a damn sight fairer than wrapping a head harness, you know, choke, pinch, whatever. And I know that there's nothing wrong with those either. Do you know what I mean? Use proportionately, use necessarily, use considerately and compassionately. There's nothing wrong with those either. But the fact is that it isn't a reliance thing. It's not, because it's nothing to do with business. What it is to do with is reality and honesty and welfare. All I care about in my heart of hearts, if I were a rich man, I wouldn't give a monkeys about having a dog training business, but I'd still have dogs. I'd still help people. If I could afford to do what I do for nothing, I'd bloody do it. Because I like helping people, and I like the enjoyment that you see in people and their dogs when they get the successful resolution of something that they've struggled with, often for absolutely years, you know? But that aside, anyway, I'm going off adrift. What I consider to be a very, very beneficial idea, and what I think would be really, really interesting to do, is for the people who have worked dogs where at some juncture they've used pressure of some kind, negative pressure. And I'm going to exclude those who use food deprivation protocols or the use of frustrative non-reward for shaping procedures. I'm not going to include those. I'm going to talk about an actual tool. So any tool that you've used that could be considered negative, aversive, coercive, punitive, whatever. I'm not going to go down the rhetoric, you know, of, oh, well, they're barbaric and because I saw this person want to. So that's neither here nor there. But the fact is, if you are somebody who has a dog and you have used those sort of tools on your dog, I would ask that you take your dog into the context where the dog is trained and just show the dog. Show what the dog is like, how the dog behaves, you know, whether the dog's responsive, whether the dog shows. I'm purposely not putting in commands here because there's no point of doing this. If you want to see commanded exercises, there's umpteen videos of her doing those. This is choice. This is something that what I want to show is her natural preference in a particular environment, and her natural preference is to be alongside me, which bucks the notion that I, as the person that has delivered the corrections or been responsible for the corrections, am someone to be avoided. So, conclusion, if you have a dog that's been trained or has been subject to at any time, a coercive or corrective tool, aversive tool if you like, alongside any other training method that you might use, which I would imagine for most people is a shed load of reward-based stuff as well, whether that's praise, toys, food, whatever. That you record it, that you record a short snippet of it, and that we compile them. I think it would be very interesting to compile them and to hopefully, I mean, there's the opportunity, there's the potential to display hundreds of thousands of these dogs. But I'm not, you know, something no more than a minute's worth, you know, where you can put it together and we can go forward and say, bang, there you go, have a look at that, analyse that. And let's see what happens when you actually get reality put in your face, as opposed to somebody's interpretation or version of it. Good girl.